For my interview, I will be interviewing my dad, Leroy Spar. Okay. Number 1. In what capacity did you serve our country? What title did you hold, and what were your primary duties and responsibilities?
Okay, so when I graduated from the Naval Academy, I volunteered to go into the submarine force of the United States. After graduation from college, I went to nuclear power school. I learned how to operate a nuclear reactor in a submarine and surface ship. And after that, I was detailed to a fast attack submarine out of New London, Connecticut for 4 years.
Okay. Why did you decide to join the service? What convinced you?
Well, let me finish.
Okay.
So, my primary responsibilities was to be a junior officer on a nuclear-powered submarine, and I operated and supervised operations of the reactor plant for the first year and a half, and then while I was supervising that 8 hours a day, the other time, during the 24 hours of the day, we slept about 6 or 7 hours a day, and about 7 hours a day we qualified to become officer of the deck of a submarine. So you start off running the reactor plant, but then the last year and a half I was on board, I qualified as officer of the deck, surface and submerged, and I, representing the commanding officer, ran the whole submarine and was responsible for the 140 lives that were on board.
Why did you decide to join the service, and what convinced you or made you want to commit yourself to something greater than yourself?
Well, I was the oldest of 8 kids, and I knew that if I got into a service academy that I almost had to go to take some of the financial burden off my parents for college. But in addition to that, I thought it would be a great educational experience, a great adventure, if you will. And I was kind of young then. It's hard for young people to be totally committed to doing something for the country to better themselves, but that was part of it too. I was in the service during the Cold War. In the 70s, I went to the Naval Academy. In 1972, Vietnam was still happening. I actually got a draft number. I would not have been drafted, but since I went to the Naval Academy, I was in the service anyway.
Okay. What was your favorite thing about your responsibilities?
The challenges, the technical challenges, the morality, the training in honor and integrity were things that, and being part of something to help the country and defend the country, were some things that appealed to me, that motivated me, and as a young man, I wanted to do my part to make the United States a better place.
How did you feel about the uniform? Did you like it, or did you want to take it off? And also, who pressed them or ironed them? And do they teach you if you get it that way?
Okay, there's a couple questions there. Uniforms are great because you don't have to worry about what you're going to wear. Uniforms in the Navy were pretty sharp. There were many different uniforms. Some of them for dress, some were for everyday working. I did not have a problem wearing a uniform. I had gone to Catholic school my whole life. I had to wear uniforms my whole life, so wearing uniforms when I was in the service was not a problem for me. It was just basically doing what I'd already been doing for the previous 8 or 10 years. So that was not a problem at all. A lot of the uniforms you had to have take them to a dry cleaners because they were made of fabrics that you couldn't wash yourself and iron. But a lot of the daily uniforms were wash and wear and were very easy to take care of. We had to basically do that all ourselves. We didn't make a lot of money, so in general, junior officers did their own laundry.
What is one thing you would tell a high school student regarding your knowledge, experience, or advice on committing your life to service?
Okay, so there's different kinds of commitments. I only served 5 years after I graduated from the Naval Academy. That was all that was required. I did not have, a lot of my classmates stayed in for 25 or 30 years. A couple of them stayed in for 40 years and were admirals in the Navy. But the vast majority of people that I graduated from the Naval Academy with left the service after 5 years of active duty, 5 to 7 or 8 years of active duty. What was the question again?
Like, what is one thing you would tell a high school student regarding your knowledge, experience, or advice?
Going into the Navy, we did not have to fight any ground wars, particularly in the Middle East. That's been a relatively recent thing over the last 15 years. That, I believe, is it's difficult to answer because I think every young man and or woman really should serve in the armed forces for at least 2 to 3 years. I think it's a good life experience, and it gives you a different perspective, knowing that you served your country in the military for a couple of years. You don't have to stay long. You can get out after that. I am reticent about the use of our troops over in the Middle East. I think it's not smart, that we shouldn't be doing it, but there's different reasons to be in the military. For protecting the United States, I'm all for that. Sending our young men and women over to die in foreign countries for oil, I think is a mistake. I think it's a mistake for our government to use the military as a political pawn. If you're going to go to war, you go to war to win, or you shouldn't go to war. That's my philosophy.
Okay. So we're into my questions now. When were you in service? When you were in service, did you miss anything? If so, what were they?
Of course. Going into the service requires a lot of sacrifice on the part of the individual that does it. You're deployed from home for long periods of time. You have to work very hard in the service. Normal work weeks were 80 hours a week, not 40 like they are in civilian life. So there's a lot of sacrifice that has to occur, and the people that serve have to be prepared to do that. And if you do it for 2 or 3 years, it's less of a sacrifice to do it than if you do it for 30 years. So it's prorated. The longer you stay in the service, the more you have to give up. It's a difficult life at best, but if you're not married, you don't have kids, 3 or 4 years in the service is a great experience.
What was the first thing you did when you came home?
First thing I did when I came home was after I got out of service, I came back to Maryland to be with my family for a month or 2. My brothers and sisters, and mother and father.
Were there any conflicts going on in the world when you joined the service?
Yes, I joined the service in 1972. I actually had a draft number for Vietnam. It was higher. I believe that year they only were taking draft numbers up to 50. I think mine was like 100, something like that. So I would not have been drafted as an enlisted person, but I did join the Naval Academy during the Vietnam conflict, which ended in about 1974, and that was also during a period of the Cold War with Russia. So the entire time I was in the service, we were in a military competition with the Russians, particularly with respect to nuclear arms and nuclear weapons.
Okay. How did your parents feel about you joining to serve our country?
They were supportive, but they never really said a lot about it one way or the other. It was my decision.
Okay. Did you regret following any? If so, if there were any regretful unjust orders, did you regret following any of them? Any unjust orders from your leading officers, commanders, or any other event?
There were no immoral orders, but there were some unjust orders where There's two schools of thought on how to be a leader. One of them, some people focus strictly on the job results, and they don't care about the people too much. If they burn out the people, if the people don't stay in the service, as long as they got the job done and they got an A on it, they did, accolades for doing a good job. That was the most important thing. Other people that I served with tried to balance the doing a good job and getting good grades on combat readiness of the ship with taking care of their people. So I emulated those type of individuals that not only tried to get the job done and do a good job, but they also tried to take care of their people. And like I said, not all military commanders are like that. And when you work for one that's kind of doesn't care about his people, there are some unjust things that occur, making people work long hours, not giving them credit, you understand, being more worried about getting an A in evaluations of the ship, and not worrying about whether the people are miserable and that sort of thing. So I never saw any immoral orders where people, commanders, gave orders that were illegal or immoral. But I did see unjust things where some commanders did not treat their people as well as they should have.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for letting me interview you.
Okay. Handshake.